And it says he's a priest of the Most High God. And Abraham pays tithes to him out of what he had and out of the spoils of the kings. So then we run across Jethro, who is Moses' father-in-law, and he is a priest of God. And from what he does, I understand, and I hope I'm right about that he is worshiping the same God that Moses is working for and is worshiping. There's a couple of things as we go into this particular look-see about Moses and about Aaron. Aaron is 83 years old at this time in 1450 BC. Moses is 80 years old. Aaron is 3 years older than Moses is, and these two men are doing God's bidding. Aaron still has that staff that turned into the serpent, doesn't he? Yeah. And he's with Moses, and he is the mouthpiece that talked to Pharaoh when God gave Moses instruction about going in and about the plagues and all of that, and Aaron has seen all that. So when we get around to looking at what's going on, Moses has been called up into the mountain. He got a verbal on the Ten Commandments in chapter 18. And he's been called up into the mountain again, and he's going to be up there 40 days and 40 nights. How many 40 days and how many 40 nights and how many 40s are in the Bible? Lots of them, aren't there? Yeah. Elijah, when he flees from Ahab and Jezebel, he thinks he's the only guy left in Israel, only guy that worships God. God said, no, I got 7,000. He is in a cave for 40 days and 40 nights. Wow. Moses, 40 days and 40 nights. Jesus, 40 days and 40 nights in the wilderness, right? Yeah, and it rained for 40 days and 40 nights. Wow, lots of 40s. And 40 years in the wilderness till all of the folks who signed up for the we can't do it, well, all of the we can't do it die that are 20 years and older when they first approach Canaan's land. And so 40s plays a big role in looking at what goes on. But he's up there on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights. And they've been used to Moses being out there and being in the front and being in the lead. And what did Jethro tell him to do? When Jethro comes to see him and bring his wife, Zipporah, and his 2 children to him, his 2 sons were Gershom and Eliezer, are Moses' 2 sons. And Jethro brings the wife and the 2 sons from over in Midian down to Sinai to be with Moses. And he observes what Moses is doing. And what he is doing is he's sitting and all the folks, everybody, anybody with a problem, be it large, small, or sort of indifferent, comes to Moses to get him to solve the problem. Well, now you can spend all day listening to stuff, you know, and there's always 2 sides to most stories, aren't there? And sometimes 3. And so he is busy listening to all that, and it's just, you know, consumes all of his daytime time. Jethro said, look here, here's how you do that. You appoint leaders, 1 over 1,000, 1 over hundreds, 1 over tens, and let them handle all the little stuff. And anything they think they can't handle, they bring to you. Sounds like a winner, doesn't it? Well, how's the army laid out? Yes, sir, Bob. I just figured to say that. Yeah, it's like the military. How many people are in? How many men are in an infantry squad? 10. And they've got a yes, sir. 24th Division. Okay. They, it depends on the type division, how many men are in it, doesn't it? If it's a heavy division with armor and all that, it's going to be somewhere around 16,000 in a mech division. Infantry division is pure infantry division. There's not going to be but about 10,000, and they're broken down into brigades, 3 brigades normally, and the brigades is broken down into battalions. And the battalions are broken down into companies, and the companies are broken down into squads, platoons and squads. And so that's really what he's saying to him. And he says, here's an easy way for you to handle this. Yes, you will still be making judgments, but it'll be on major stuff. It'll be on big stuff. And the best way to do that is call the leaders of the thousands in that have the problem, and you sit down with them as a committee and figure out what's going on and then make a decision. And that's a pretty good way to operate. So anyway, Moses then is up on the mountain. What happens when God comes to the mountain? Number one, he tells Moses, don't let the people come near. Don't let an animal come near the base of the mountain. Keep them away, or they will die. Hello? And so he says, if an animal comes up there, you shoot him through with arrows. If a person comes, you stone him. So that's a pretty big decree, isn't it? And sometimes I try to put myself in what would I do, or how would I be if I was one of those not in charge of anything? I'm just, I've been freed from Egyptian slavery, and I've got my wife and children, and I've got my animals that I had, and I'm in the camp, and they tell me don't go near the mountain. And if I understand what has happened, God has been responsible for. We don't have an army. We really don't have an army that's trained, that can do, and is equipped to fight big battles. And we've just walked away from the mightiest country that we know of. And as far as reading this scenario and reading the Old Testament, at the point in time that they leave Egypt, Egypt is the big boy on the block, isn't it? And they have escaped from him, and they have seen his army and him drowned in the Red Sea. Okay? And when God says don't come near the mountain, I don't go near the mountain. Don't go near. Yes, sir.
What gets me is going across that sea. God saved them, and they turn right around.
Yeah, Moses is gone 40 days and 40 nights. They haven't seen him. They don't know where he is. What happened? All that, if you go to 19, and let's see, where was this? No, it's in chapter 20. Well, in 19, it says that it was, there was, in verse 16 of chapter 19, it says, it came to pass on the 3rd day in the morning that there were thunderings and lightning and thick cloud upon the mountain, the voice of the trumpet exceedingly loud, so that all the people that were in the camp trembled. And then when you get over to 20 and verse 19, and they said unto Moses, speak thou with us, and we will hear, but let not God speak with us, lest we die. Powerful. What have they seen? And here, how do you get out of Egypt? How do you get across the Red Sea? They didn't have pontoon boats, you know. In World War II, to get across the Rhine River in Germany, they had to bring pontoon boats over there because the Germans had blown every bridge except for the one at Nijmegen. It was the only bridge left standing that they could cross into Germany from where they were in France. And they brought pontoon boats up there and put them in, the Corps of Engineers, and to cross just the Rhine River. Now, the Rhine River is pretty. And if you ever get to Germany, get your car, drive the Rhine River, and look at the castles, and look at the beauty of it, and going through the valleys. It is a gorgeous river. It really is. But here is the Red Sea. And they come up to that thing. Moses holds the rod out over it, and it opens up wide enough for the children of Israel to cross. It depends on who you read, but the best I can come up with as far as getting across that Red Sea with that many people, and we're talking 22.5 million to 4 million people, and they can't just really nail down how many that was, but that's a bunch of people. To get across that river that Red Sea in one night, they had to have a gap in the Red Sea of at least 3 miles, and they had to be lined up abreast, one man next to each, he's rubbing shoulders, of 5,000 in each line to get across in one night. If they went two abreast, two people walking abreast, and the line would stretch 800 miles, and it'd take 35 days to cross the Red Sea. So we're not talking about just some inconsequential, I got my feet wet. And some say, well, that was what it was. They just crossed some marshy land. Well, how did the chariots and the horses die? They drowned. And the folks in them. Wow. Now, these people have seen that, and they have done that. They have participated in that. They have seen the dead of all of the Egyptians. They've seen the firstborn of animal and of mankind die on the 14th day of the first month. Now they're a month and a half into this journey going to the promised land. And it's the land that was promised to who? Abraham. Abraham and his father, Terah, leave what is we commonly refer to as Persia or Babylon, and they go up into what is now Syria. And the place that they were sojourning at that point in time, after they get to a place and settle down, was Haran in Syria. And that's where Abraham gets his call from, is to leave here and go where I promise you. And he gets up and leaves. And he is promised great promises. And those great promises turn out to be a land flowing with milk and honey. Turns out to be innumerable people, more than the sand on the beach. He's promised through his lineage, and he's a son of Shem as far as the Noah folks are concerned. He's a descendant of Shem. And he's promised the Savior. The Savior. Does he understand? I don't think so. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But he is promised, and his lineage will come a great nation, and then a Savior of all mankind. Okay? What a promise. And I don't know how many people in that camp, and we've talked about the size of that camp being all the way across the state of Alabama in the north section, all the way down to Russellville, would take that to encamp all of those folks and all of their animals and all of their family and all that stuff. All 12 tribes. We talked about how much food they'd need. 167 boxcars a day. 11 million gallons of water a day just to keep them alive, them and their animals. And so when they start talking about water, now I can empathize with that, can't you? Now, I have never been where I didn't get at least one drink of water sometime during that day. But these guys have gone 3 days and they start fussing about no water. And then God leads them to a place where there's 12 wells. And then Moses hits the rock and get water. They've seen all this. Moses and Aaron have been a part of all this. You know, they have stood in front of the king of the greatest country on the earth that they're in that area in their time. Moses goes from watching Jethro's herds to talking to Pharaoh. Hello? Yes, he'd been raised in Pharaoh's house, but that was a long time. That was 40 years ago. Who's the most powerful person you've ever had a conversation with or worked for? Moses and Aaron are doing God's bidding. The folks, the average guy like me, sees Moses and Aaron and doesn't see God until he's on that cloud's out there. And they cross the Red Sea, and the cloud leads them in the daytime, and it leads them at night. It's over the mountain now. It's going to be there for 40 days and 40 nights with Moses. What's going on in that 40 days and 40 nights? What's in chapter 20, 31 in Exodus is what's going on. He's giving them rules to live by on a daily basis. And Moses is going to bring that down from the mountain. And how long does it take him to write it down? I don't know. But he talks about how you treat your fellow man. He talks about all kinds of stuff, about how to live your life on a daily basis. Well, what had they seen? If all you saw was your slave master, would that be who you wanted to act like? If that was all you had seen in your lifetime. And I can't tell you how many years it took them to get from Jacob, or from Joseph and then Jacob getting into Egypt, how long it took them to become slaves. It took a while. It took the dying of at least that first Pharaoh and Joseph and Jacob. Probably took somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 years or longer till the Pharaoh comes up and says, we can put these guys to work for us. And that's what they wound up doing. God's on the mountain with Moses. And the people understand how powerful he is. And would that get your attention? If what you woke up to this morning was the loud trumpet and thundering and lightning and the earth trembling, get your attention. Well, he got the people's attention on that, and they said, Moses, you can come down and bring all the messages from him and talk to us, but don't let him talk to us. Don't let him talk to us. And is that out of fear? Yes. And awe and respect and the whole 9 yards. You know, Anyway, Moses is up there for 40 days and 40 nights, and they don't remember. I say they don't remember. Get over to 32, chapter 32. It says, when the people saw that Moses delayed to come down out of the mount, the people gathered themselves together unto Aaron and said unto him, Up, make us gods, which shall go before us. For as far as this Moses, the man that brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we wot not what has become of him. So we don't know what happened. We hadn't seen him in 40 days. He's not, where is he? He's the one that's been leading us. So what are they really saying to Aaron? Now remember, Aaron's 83 years old. And the man that's on the mountain is 80 years old. They're going to live to be 120, 130 years old. So they're in the 3/4 of their life has been spent so far. The last quarter they go do God's will. Hopefully. And so they say, we hadn't seen him. Where is he? What's happened to him? Well, Aaron doesn't know. He knows he's on the mountain. He knows he's talking to God. And God has given him a whole chapter 20 through chapter 31. He's given him, how do you live your life under my covenant? And it starts out with the 10 Commandments, doesn't it? And it goes on and talks about how you're going to build. It talks how you're going to dress Aaron as a high priest. How you're going to induct him as a high priest. What's the ceremony that's going to be gone through? What's the tabernacle going to look like? And we'll talk about tabernacle later on in this series, hopefully. But anyway, the tabernacle is, as they know, is a tent, right? Yeah, it's a tent that's 30 feet by 15 feet. And then the courtyard for it is 150 feet by 45. But he's getting the instructions for all that. He's getting instructions on how to build the Ark of the Covenant, what to put in it, and how you're supposed to live your life on a daily basis, and all those things. This is, and how they instituted is with a perfect red heifer, isn't it? So, when we go through and look at all of the stuff that they go through and how they worship God under the old law, I guess the thing that really jumps out at you is in AD 70, we talked about this last week. It was estimated that there were 270,000 lambs a year old that were killed on Passover in AD 70. And that's the last year that the temple was standing, remember? The temple's going to be gone after that. What's on the temple ground today? The Blue Mosque, right? Yeah. It's a Muslim mount now. Anyway, so they get all of that. And then when God gets ready for Moses to come down from the mountain, he gives him a tablet or 2 stone tablets that have the 10 Commandments written in God's hand on those tablets. I think it's also interesting to note that when he starts talking about building the altar in the courtyard of the tabernacle, he says, don't hew the stones, use natural stones. So when you start thinking about the altar, it's not hewn out and polished marble. It's just regular old field stones that make up that altar. God doesn't want man's hand in building or making the altar by carving out stones. Anyway, they said, make us gods. Now, what are we remembering? I get in a month and a half. What are these folks remembering? That are standing there petitioning Aaron Make us gods. They got to be looking back over their shoulder at Egypt, don't they? They've started doing that. Why did you bring us out here to starve? We had food to eat over there, even though we were slaves and working miserable. We had something to eat. And so what do they get? They get quail, right? Get quail at night and manna in the morning. For how long? 40 years. 40 years. But anyway, what are they thinking about? It says, make us gods. They just don't want God to talk to them. It hadn't been 10 days. Well, maybe it's been 40 days. It says, don't let God talk to us. We're afraid of that. And he's powerful enough they can hear him all throughout the camp. And they see the thunder and the lightning. And they've seen all the plagues. You know, frogs would have been enough. Then flies, then locusts, darkness, dead children, dead animals. And so make us gods. And what does Aaron do? Yes, sir.
I've never noticed this in verse 2, chapter 32. Back in the 70s, 80s, when the hippies came in, men started wearing everything. I didn't realize that men, the woman wore everything back then.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought it just the women.
No, the boys did. According to that. Yeah. And where'd they get those earrings? Where'd they get the gold earrings? From the Egyptians. Right, yeah. The Egyptians would give them anything they had to get them out of there. They didn't want any more of that. Because the next night, it could have been the whole family, couldn't it? Yeah. Yeah. Next night, it could have been not a single soul left in the land of Egypt. And so they said, here, take what we've got and get out of here now. It's very interesting that Aaron takes up gold and melts it down and forms it into a calf. Yes, sir. Yeah. He lied to Moses, didn't he? Yeah. And he's still going to be the high priest. Yeah. Okay. It's all men need redemption, including Aaron, including Moses. Name them in the Old Testament, in the New Testament. All men need redemption. Every one of us. Every one of us. I can't tell you that, you tried, you don't know what you'll do. Okay? It's that simple. Till you try, you can sit and ponder what would I do. You don't know till you're faced with the situation. So I can't tell you if I had been there in the camp and had been used to Moses talking to us and conveying to me what God had said and for me to do, and all of a sudden he's not there anymore. He's up on the mountain. See, nobody, according to this, nobody asked Aaron, do you know where Moses is? That's your brother. Do you know? And surely he would have told him, I was on the mountain with him and we came down and God called him back up. Hello? And that's where he is and that's where he's been and he'll be coming back. Because God wouldn't call him up there to tell him something, not send him back. But Aaron didn't tell him that, did he? No. He said, bring me your gold. What did Moses do with the gold, the calf? There you go. Ms. Phelps says, and she's got it right. He ground that gold calf up and put it in the water and made them drink it. Hello? That's the end of the gold calf. No. That's not the end of the gold calf, is it? Wow. But he, yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, doesn't take long at all. You can tell a lie till everybody believes it. You know, everybody. Huh? Poncho said politicians do it every day. Amen. I'm Pocahontas. I didn't say that. Withdraw. Somebody object. Strike that from the record. Anyway, he doesn't talk them out of it. Doesn't try to. He says, just bring me the gold. Bring me the gold. Why doesn't he remember those things that just happened? You know, he's got to be standing there with that staff, doesn't he? Hello. They'd had one battle with Amalekite. And Aaron and Jehu, if I believe that's his name, I may be wrong, memory might be slipping. Anyway, two guys stand there and hold Moses' arms up. Aaron's one of them. And they defeat the Amalekite. And they don't have an army. They haven't been trained in the use of swords. They haven't been trained. They don't have chariots. They don't have horses. They don't have anything to fight a battle with except staffs that they herd their cows with. That doesn't mean God doesn't take care of it. How many Assyrians were killed outside the city of Jerusalem? In about 720 BC? 185,000. And Judah hadn't lifted their hand to whip them. God killed them. Okay? And he could take care of Amalekites too, which wouldn't be any problem. Oh, these Amalekites were, in fact, descendants of Esau. Kinfolks. Kinfolks. So the Moabites, the same thing. Anyway, Aaron had seen Pharaoh's army drown. He'd seen the plagues. He'd been a party to that. He'd watched it. He'd heard Pharaoh be told that here's what's going to happen. And he'd heard Pharaoh ask, get rid of them. When? Tomorrow. You know. And so, but he makes the golden calf. Then he declares a feast to the Lord. Now, Lord is capitalized there. And I'm having difficulty stretching that he's built this golden calf and the commandments say, have no other gods before me. He's also telling Moses, while Moses is up on the mountain, don't make gods out of silver or gold or wood or none of that stuff. I'm God. And he's been a party to all that, and here he is making a golden calf. They turned aside quickly in 45 days. 45 days from Passover, here they are, down by Sinai. What was that? Ever happened in the New Testament? Nod your head, yes. Go read Galatians 1. What happens in the first chapter of Galatians? Paul writes to him and says, I marvel that you are so soon removed from the gospel that I preached to you. That's paraphrased. And he says, here's what I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you, don't follow folks that don't preach the same thing I preach. And whoever does, let him be accursed. And he doubled down on that. The next verse is the same thing. If somebody comes preaching any gospel to you in Galatia that I didn't preach and you hadn't heard before, let him be accursed. How long had it been since Paul had been in Galatia? Probably 3 years at most. And he's having to write to them and tell them, you're following false doctrine. And so it happens all the time. Is it happening today? Nod your head, yes. Certainly is. Last Magnolia messenger that I got was talking to that and what's being preached and what's wrong. When else was the golden calf introduced? When Solomon dies, what happens to the kingdom? Huh? Divided, yes. Two guys, right? Rehoboam and Jeroboam. They come to Rehoboam, who is supposed to be the king. They come to him and say, you need to take off some of the taxes that your father imposed upon us. They're grievous. And he asked the young folks, and the young folks said, no, that's not right. Tax them more. So he does, and here comes Jeroboam. And Jeroboam comes out of Egypt and comes up there and takes over the 10 tribes that are up north. I guess the first city, roughly, that you could come to, major city, in that northern kingdom was Bethel. The year is 931 BC. So that says that from the time of Sinai and the golden calf, it's been 450 years. Or 520 years, I'm sorry. It's been 520 years since the golden calf and Moses and Aaron to now, to Jeroboam. He has 2 golden calves. He don't want them to go back to Jerusalem to the temple to worship God. He wants them to worship and stay in his 10 tribes. Puts a golden calf in Bethel and a golden calf in Dan. Dan's up at the headwaters of the Sea of Gennesaret, and Capernaum's on the north shore. What happens after that? 200 years later, 721 BC, the Assyrian Sargon II takes the 10 northern tribes. They disappear as far as tribes are concerned from the face of the earth. And in 585, Nebuchadnezzar takes the 2 southern tribes. And that's the end of the Israelite kingdom.